Good day, class. My name is Craig Greeley, and I'll provide to you today a brief presentation on maintenance and inspection programs, largely with the focus on the C-130J platform. The reason I've chosen this particular airframe to give this presentation on is given my knowledge and background on the development of the maintenance program to the MSG3 standard and my interactions with Lockheed to date. I feel that it'll provide you with an overall synopsis of the varying types of maintenance, levels of maintenance, and the maintenance inspection program supporting this particular airframe. As part of this presentation, I'll start off by defining what effectively are commonly referred to as the 4 A's of maintenance. Then we'll talk to the different types of maintenance or lines of maintenance, as well as the different levels of maintenance, the overarching inspection programs, before concluding with some airworthiness considerations rounding out the presentation. Before we can get in and start discussing effectively the varying types, levels, and inspection programs for an aircraft, I thought it would be prudent to set the background and set the fundamental principles for how maintenance is conducted on an aircraft. This is what I provided to you here as the 4 A's of aircraft maintenance. The first A of aircraft maintenance comes down to performing maintenance in accordance with accepted standards. For this, what we're referring to are the varying policies and procedures that maintenance is being conducted by. Secondly, if you will, maintenance is being conducted in accordance with approved procedures. In this regard, the approved procedures are specifically the maintenance manuals for that particular airframe. Thirdly, authorized individuals are the key component of conducting aircraft maintenance, in that you need certain individuals that are trained, qualified, and authorized to conduct that aircraft maintenance, as well as certify it at the end of completion. Finally, overarching all of that is the ability for an organization to be accredited or authorized to conduct that level of maintenance. This is to say that, unfortunately, we can't just simply conduct maintenance in our home garages without adhering to those 4 basic principles. With an understanding of the 4 A's of maintenance, let's talk about now the different types, or what I commonly refer to as the lines of maintenance. In this regard, let's not think about exactly what maintenance is being conducted, but think more with regards to where that maintenance is being conducted. I've listed here the 3 different lines of maintenance: first, second, and third. First line maintenance is primarily what you would consider flight line maintenance. It's the daily servicing functions, the launch and recovery of aircraft, configuration changes, and ram snags. This is directly linked to daily flight operations. For example, think about you taking a flight on your closest airline, maybe it's Delta, and think of the individuals around that aircraft supporting that to get launched. They're refueling the aircraft, they're doing a post-flight or pre-flight inspections, and that's what I'm referring to as first-line maintenance. Second line maintenance, if you will, is now a little bit deeper into the overarching maintenance program. It's supported by shops, and now we're talking about some of the periodic maintenance functions that are carried out on that aircraft. There are longer repairs, major component replacements such as engine replacements. So now, in this regard, this line of maintenance is being conducted, if you will, inside of a hangar, potentially with supporting shops in the background. The third line of maintenance is infrequently done, and it's the major repairs. Commonly think of this as major depot level inspections. In contrast to the different types or lines of maintenance, with regards to levels of maintenance, now consider about how deep into the maintenance program we're actually going to perform maintenance on our aircraft. Think about what tasks are specifically being performed, the specialized skill sets, the additional level of training, and the deeper publications that we need to conduct that level of maintenance. The first level of aircraft maintenance are the servicing functions, minor corrective and preventative maintenance tasks, and generally considered in this regard, there's no major disassembly of the aircraft. So for first level maintenance, it's largely aligned with first line maintenance. Second level maintenance, now we're deeper into the maintenance program. We're conducting major preventative maintenance. We need access to shops and specialized skill sets. And as I alluded to earlier, we're talking about depot level maintenance at this regard. So second level maintenance is largely linked towards what you could consider second and third line maintenance. Third level maintenance in this regard is replacement of major components, component assembly, rebuilding and overhaul of components. So think about, in this regard, I've removed my engine from the aircraft. I've taken that engine and I've sent it away to another facility. Think of Rolls-Royce or Standard Aero, where they're actually disassembling the engine, getting down to some of its core components. Or think of avionics equipment and doing the same thing. I'm opening up that box, I'm getting in, I'm taking a look at the circuit cards inside to do some sort of repairs on an internal level. The inspection programs, this is where the fun really starts to begin. Though there are different types of inspection programs on an aircraft, as we think about conditional inspections, I'll call them special inspections. You can think of, we learned about sort of the on-condition aspects of the readings over this past week. But what I boiled it down to here and what I've tried to sum up are the four major preventative maintenance checks on an aircraft, if you will, the A, B, C, and D check inspections. Each level of inspection goes deeper, if you will, into the overarching maintenance program with an increase in complexity as well as the length. An A check is minor in nature, completed at first line, first level, and typically takes a few hours a day. There's approximately one A check every year. For my particular fleet, an A check is done every 38 weeks and takes about 3 days to complete. B checks, again, we're going deeper. It's double the interval, if you will. So for me right now, I'm looking at a 72-week interval and potentially taking upwards 2 weeks to complete. Your C checks are really what are considered to be your first major preventative maintenance inspections. The duration for completion is now pushed out to months, and depending on the corrective actions that need to take place, it could be extended even further. D checks, D for depot level maintenance inspections. Now we're talking about the aircraft being on ground for 3+ months, and the scope of the work is greatly increased. Of my recent aircraft that had just gone through its first depot level inspection, I was looking about 100 days plus from what was a scheduled 44 days. So you can see in that regard just how much corrective maintenance would potentially be done as part of a D check. With the basic foundation of the varying types, lines, levels, and different inspections from a periodic perspective, it might be somewhat confusing to understand. So what I've done here is I've laid out a bit of a diagram that I'll walk you through that I hope will alleviate some of the confusion. So in our scenario, think of an airfield. Think of the different hangars, think of the different infrastructure that's on site supporting daily flight operations. As well, think of the different MRO facilities and the different OEMs in the background that, again, are supporting you on the front lines, doing what you need to do to support daily operations. First, think of the airfield. Think of the tarmac. Think of the aircraft outside of a hangar, out on the flight line, where I've got a mechanic who's turning wrenches on an aircraft. And I jokingly put here the red box around in the specific area of where that technician would enter and exit from. For those that have ever been on a USAF airfield, they know exactly what I'm talking about when I say don't cross the red line. Now think of, for that technician and that aircraft, they probably have a hangar somewhere on that airfield. And inside of that hangar, there's varying shops. There's potentially other aircraft that are being worked on. And in behind that, potentially far away, I've got an MRO, I've got a contractor, I've got a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility somewhere, probably not on site, where depot level maintenance is being conducted, if you will. This aircraft is going to be down for months, maybe half a year, maybe longer, depending on what's wrong with it, for different inspection programs, different levels of maintenance. In that facility, think about it, I've removed an engine. And I've taken that engine and I've sent it away to Standard Aero. I've taken some avionics equipment and I've sent it directly to Honeywell. Maybe that facility is actually the OEM like Lockheed Martin, and I've given that aircraft over to them for some sort of major repair or major midlife upgrade program, as an example. Okay, now let's really have some fun and try to piece all this together. Sorry for my really crude drawings here, but I hope it helps and I hope you laugh a little bit along the way. So, First line maintenance. As I alluded to earlier, first line maintenance, think about where that maintenance is being conducted as opposed to what we're doing. So in this regard, it's largely focused on the activities that are out on the flight line, but I've encompassed some of the hangar itself because potentially there are times when that aircraft is being brought inside for quick repairs to get it outside of the elements. Maybe it's going to be down for a couple of hours. Maybe I'm changing tires as an example, if you will. But in that regard, it's focused on a really low level, generally in support of daily operations. Think of quick things we're doing to the aircraft. Second line maintenance, on the other hand, I've encompassed on the second half of that hangar. I've done that because potentially now there's an area that's being segregated where deeper level of maintenance is being conducted, as well as now I need access to those specialized shops. I've also highlighted a specific portion of the MRO facility because potentially I'm contracting some of this second line work out. Lastly, if you will, third line maintenance. Third line maintenance generally is considered to be just with regards to the MRO facility itself, or a specialized hangar I'm sending that aircraft away. But you could see that varying difference across those three pillars. What I've done specifically here though, and we could have a debate, is I've removed StandardAero, Rolls-Royce, Honeywell, and Lockheed from any aspect of that, and I'll show you why here in a second. With regards to the levels of maintenance, we've already talked about this, but first line and first level maintenance are generally one and about the same in terms of that level of depth that we're going to. But second level maintenance is that second half of the hangar, and it's all of what the MRO facility are typically doing in terms of the complexity of how much I'm removing from that aircraft to support the end state goal of that preventative maintenance task. This is where Honeywell and those additional companies come into play, is that I would consider those strictly being at third level. It's where I've removed an APU or an engine, I've sent it away to that contractor, and they're doing that deeper level of maintenance to break it down to do any sort of repair and overhaul on it. So that's the different levels of lines and levels of maintenance. With regards to the inspections, from an A-check perspective, again, first line, first level, this is where I'm looking at having it done. Again, it's a matter of hours. It might be a couple of days in which it's down. So those on the flight line typically are able to conduct that. My B check, again, maybe at that squadron or within that airline, they're able to carry out that level of maintenance as well. But I'm not sending that aircraft away at this point in time. But the B check, now I need access to some specialized shops as that aircraft might be down for a longer period of time. My C check, again, might be able to be done at that local base, that local facility, but this is where I probably start contracting that out to an MRO facility, a different contractor, if you will, like Delta Tech Ops or Cascade, for them to carry out that work. And lastly, I would argue that MRO are the ones that are strictly carrying out those D-check inspections, 3+, 6+ months. That's where I'm looking. So again, that Delta Tech Ops, my Cascades, maybe my branch of my airline has got their own separate MRO facility, but ideally not at the location where that aircraft is housed unless I have that specialized equipment and those specialized facilities and personnel to carry out that level of maintenance both efficiently and effectively. By now you should have a good appreciation of the different lines or types of maintenance, the different levels of maintenance, as well as from a preventative maintenance program perspective, the different checks that are carried out and potentially where they're being carried out. What I want to quickly talk about now are the impacts on the inspection programs. As you can appreciate, as I move from A checks through D checks, there's a driving increase in need for additional facilities to support the maintenance, additional personnel, additional parts, which is a key portion that I've left out of this presentation, and an increasing skill set. The increase in skill set we can think about being welding on an aircraft. This is a highly specialized skill, if you will, and the skill sets required and the time it takes to get a person trained, qualified, and authorized to some of the welding tickets that they would need is incredible. So in that regard, as we start to develop repairs for those items that we found broken as part of those increasing checks on an aircraft, there's an increase in reliance on engineering to develop the repairs for the damage that's found. Those damage, as I alluded to with regards to my D-check, results in the aircraft being out of service longer than what was originally projected, which from a commercial airline perspective runs to cost overruns, a reduction in aircraft availability, as well as a decreased profits at the end of the day as that aircraft has been out of service far longer than was anticipated, and seeing costs that are dramatically larger than what was initially forecasted. With regards to the D-check at a depot level facility, for me, one of the biggest airworthiness concerns that I have is when we're contracting work outside of our parent organization and the risk that we run of that external organization conducting maintenance in a non-approved manner. So if I'm the CEO of a company, I've got control over my maintenance flight, my maintenance technicians, and their ability to execute maintenance. I'm able to see a certain level of oversight, quality assurance, quality control, doing audits, and passing on specific messages, leading the organization through a top-down approach to ensure that maintenance is being conducted in an appropriate manner. But with an outside agency, I lose that oversight and I lose that grip on my organization. So in that regard, there might be a need for on-site QA and QC, so obviously additional personnel, to verify the maintenance and ensure that compliance is being done. So it's hard to get that organization to buy into the same level of maintenance adherence that I may be leading within my internal organization. As I talked about in the last slide with regards to welding on an aircraft, there's an increase in training and currency requirements. That raises its own airworthiness concerns, if you will, as I need to ensure that those members receive the appropriate training in the appropriate amount of time, if you will, to ensure that they're trained, qualified, and authorized to do the jobs that they're doing. The integrity of the repairs is something that needs to be considered as well, because as part of a C-check or a D-check, you're probably looking in areas on the aircraft that you don't frequently go in and inspect. So the repairs that might be carried out in those highly hidden areas may result in cracks, may result in damage going unnoticed for longer periods of time. The last aspect here, very low, is with regards to test flights and flight functionals or functional checks post-major disassembly. From a C-check or D-check perspective, you potentially removed a lot of major components from that aircraft. You've probably robbed different components from that aircraft to support others in the fleet. And with that aircraft just simply being out of service for as long as what it has, it raises questions with regards to its serviceability when you bring it all back together. So the manner in which you bring that aircraft together, test it on ground, and bring it into the air raises airworthiness considerations to ensure that that's done in an appropriate manner. In conclusion, what we've talked about thus far have been the various types or lines of maintenance, the varying levels of maintenance, as well as the different inspection types. While between the preventive and the corrective maintenance tasks, there are subcategories, what I focus in on in this presentation are the preventative maintenance functions and the preventative maintenance inspections of A-check, B-check, C-check, and D-check. One of the key takeaways from my presentation for you to remember is that with increasing complexity within the maintenance program, the further back you go and the deeper you go, the more challenging it will become. This is to say, as we transition from first level to third level maintenance, there's increasing complexity and disassembling of major components, if you will, and the skill sets that are required to support them. That's the same with regards to the first through third line activities as well, in that the more I progress from first to third level, the longer that aircraft will potentially be on ground. In the last slide, we briefly talked about contracting and how it raises airworthiness concerns. This is something that truly needs to be considered whenever any organization contracts work to an MRO, or a maintenance, repair, and overhaul facility. While I presented one particular model of what first to third level and line maintenance and the varying checks might look like, there's no one size fits all, and you might have your own experiences of how you would move the varying boxes around to fit your particular organization. And all jokes aside, just remember, don't ever cross the red line on a U.S. airfield. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. I hope wherever you are, you're having a great Saturday, and I'm looking forward to our conversations over the upcoming weeks.